Hello everyone. Today we have a very inspiring guest in our channel, Dr. Krisztina Soreg, who is the teaching professor at Les Roches, Marbella, the university where I graduated from here in Marbella, as well as a doctor in economics. Thank you so much for having us today, for having this chance to interview with you.
Thank you so much for the invitation. I'm really excited.
Yes, thank you so much. The last time we saw each other was at university when I graduated.
Exactly,
before
I
graduated.
remember that.
Yes, yes. And well, today we are in a special place. Well, we're in Marbella. Well, usually our interviews take place in Marbella, you know. But you're not from Spain, as I understand.
Definitely not.
You come from Hungary, no? From a big capital city in Budapest, yes? And you were studying in Budapest Technology University, yes? Where you graduated from, and which major did you get in there?
Yeah, so first of all, it's been ages. However, that is true. I'm coming from Hungary, from Budapest. It's Central and Eastern Europe. And I finished my studies there, both the bachelor and the master. I did economics, and technically my specialization was international economy and business as well. So it took me altogether 5 years, and I was lucky enough not to have any interruption. I was able to finish it on time, and this is where the whole story begins, I may say.
After you graduated and during your studies, you were one of the top in your class, in your faculty, right? So it was pretty hard not to maintain this top, because it's really important. And you know, many students, they really wish to achieve that kind of level, you know, during the studies. It's really important to be always on top. So my first question to you, what was your motivation to study well? And
yeah,
was it always like this, or?
Yeah. That's a really good question, actually. And well, in my case, I would like to give a bit of a story, because our personal example could help others, and I also want to focus on things that I'm not happy with when it came to my own studies. And what you have to know about me regarding my personality, I'm a maximalist, and I think sometimes it's a disadvantage, because I had really, really high expectations towards myself since the beginning when it came to studies. My family was not pushing me ever. My mom was coming to my room saying enough of studying. I was spending nights sometimes until 3 a.m. getting ready for the exams. But what the problem was is at that point, you know, when you're doing your studies, you're pretty young, you never really choose your best perspectives. Like, you do not really have an area or a niche to which you would love to focus. And what I did is that I was trying to be very good with everything. And that was the problem. So it consumed a lot of your time. You really wanted to perform at your maximum capacity with all subjects, like the humanities, the real sciences, the languages. And you know, after a while, you just can't really maintain it. I had a really wrong logic, and I think, you know, naturally it comes with the age, that if you work really hard, you will be successful. So hard work means success. And we have to see that it's not true. And you know, the first time you experience it is when you're doing your studies. So it did not really affect my grades, because as you know, I had pretty good grades. I graduated with summa cum laude, and I was missing out something else that I would really recommend other students to do a bit more. Really be honest, look at yourself, look at your past, check out your skills, and try to really figure out what you're the best with. If it's, for example, math or economics or anything more real, go and do that, dive into it. But you don't have to be perfect with other subjects, because then what happens, you will have like a generally good knowledge of everything, but you will never be an expert of something very specific. And I believe that in a really, you know, quickly changing global environment, we have to find our field of expertise. You need networking a lot. And this is what I was not doing as a student, okay? I was just studying hard. I was the nerd, you know, like walking around the library, doing my studies and assessments, but I was not networking at all, okay? I was not putting myself out there. I didn't really go to job fairs. I was not thinking about, you know, an impact of an internship. And I think that was a really, really big disadvantage in the future, because what I saw later, first I wanted to work for a multinational company as everyone else. You know, you imagine yourself, linear career. Okay, forget about that. That's a myth. It doesn't exist, okay? You graduate and you see yourself moving up at the hierarchy of a company. Believe me or not, having the best grades, receiving a prize as the best faculty of a student, I could not find a job for over a year, okay? no one was accepting me. I was going for rounds and rounds of interviews, and I'm speaking of Budapest, which is a really, really big European capital city. And I was wondering, what is wrong with me? I have good grades, I'm going to those interviews, multinational companies, small business. No one. They talked to me and then never a call back. So I had a sort of a crisis. Probably it's like a crisis in your early 20s. And I couldn't really figure out what was wrong with me. And then, much later, I realized that if you go for like a very typical job for international, transnational companies, they're looking for a very special type of a worker, an employee. I will use a really nasty word, a corporate soldier, if you know what I mean. So you have to be extremely lenient. You have to be really adaptable to the corporate culture. You don't have to be too creative, to have a lot of initiatives on your own. And if you keep it really low, what many companies do, they see you as the perfect candidate for a lot of hard work, for basic activities, and then they will see how you proceed. So I was not such a person. And for that reason, they never, ever accepted me for any normal, traditional job. Okay, so that was something that I wanted to share with everyone. And that's normal.
That's so interesting. And it's a fact that being a good student is not enough.
No.
Nowadays, and especially in our industry now with hospitality,
Yeah.
like management and everything. That's why at Les Roches we have all these career fairs, and it's really important to participate in all of them, in order to network, as you said. It's all the time really, really important, as I said, especially in our case, in our department. And
Yeah, for sure.
Yes, yes. Okay, perfect.
Just one more comment, maybe back to this little question here. When we talk about success, especially in the hospitality industry, we need to know that competition is really tough there, especially since the COVID, right? The whole sector was under really, really tough pressure. And it is a sector that is really strongly depending on women, young people, and those who are not educated enough. So not everyone has, let's say, a master's degree. And you enter that market from the bottom, and if you do not have good connections, if you do not have like a good vision of where you would like to position yourself, it will take so much more time, to achieve something. And I believe that Les Roches, it's very different from other hospitality schools because it gives you like this human factor, if you know what I mean. Yes, you have great lectures, you have great studies, you have great opportunities, but when it comes, to the background of the teachers, the fairs, the networking events, all those external, let's say, guest speakers who come and you have the opportunity to meet them, they will put you on a fast track. And then just one advice, it's really hard to stick to it, but never consider competition as other people. Compete only with yourself. And if you can do that, then you will be able to see a progress because, there's no point in always comparing ourselves to some other people. Compare yourself to your previous version a year ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, not 10 years ago, okay, that's a joke. But if that's your, let's say, base point, then you will be able to move in a safe direction.
Is there anyone who inspired you to be who you are now? Is there anyone specific that you want to share with us about?
Yeah, absolutely. So if going back to the fact that when you're doing your university studies, it's really easy, to be inspired by people. And sometimes we are getting carried away by so many external factors that we, again, do not really see our own direction and our own path. In my case, as I said before, I was really struggling with looking for a job, finding the right place. I didn't really know how to continue. And I had the most random ideas what to do. I'll tell you something funny. I was extremely convinced that I have to work for the NATO. Okay, I had such a moment and I applied. I went through the whole, I think like 3-step procedure, sending all the documents, all the background. I was really interested in international relations and things related to all those things that NATO is dealing with. I got rejected. So that was the end of my life at that point. I couldn't believe why they never got back to me. And then I really didn't know what to do. And it was already my master phase at the Budapest University of Technology and Economics. And at some point, I think it was almost the last semester, we had a really interesting subject. It was called development economics. So I specialize on macroeconomics, and development economics is obviously focusing on how countries progress, if there is any issue with their development patterns. We had a really special professor there who, let's say, made a really powerful impact on me. His name is Dr. Zsombor Ligeti, and if you remember a very popular show ages ago, it's called Dr. House. So that's him, okay? He looked like him, he walked like him, he had literally the same sense of humor. And the way he presented that subject for us, it just completely, you know, overtook me and the way I was thinking about economics. So he was the person who asked every student to read this book. It is called Freakonomics, and that book changed my life. And I actually started to think what else I could be doing with myself. I really recommend everyone, whether you're an economist or not, go and get this book and start reading it, because it's from a perspective of an economist. They're trying to really interpret very special events, phenomena around the world, processes. For example, they make a comparison of a drug cartel and a multinational company, and you come to the realization that those two things actually are driven by the same purposes. Because what is the principle of economics? That we have to maximize our profit and we have to minimize our costs. But here you find a lot of humorous stories, a lot of explanations of actually, let's say, the Ku Klux Klan and the real estate agents, or such things as school teachers and sumo wrestlers. So you will find the most random things, but you know, the best thing about this book, that it will make you think and you will become a critical thinker. It has a second part, it's called Super Freakonomics. So go ahead and read that one as well. And you know, the most important thing, that it will put you on a different channel of thinking. You will try to truly go down to the details to develop this really logical way of analyzing and interpreting things. And when I teach in a normal classroom, my most important goal with the students is that I try to show them how to think on their own, how to be critical thinkers, and how not to be influenced by everything else that we're literally flooded with, okay? So Zsombor made an impact on me, and he had his own book. It's in Hungarian, so let me just give you the interpretation of the title. It's called The Human Factor. Another really important thing, so whether it's hospitality industry or economics, we always have to consider about the human factor behind it, because you can be the best professional, you can be the best expert, you can have, you know, the most diverse experience, but if you do not count with the human factor, the people behind the company, those people who are actually, you know, making an industry successful or not, and how to estimate it, how to make it more developed, then you really cannot make any kind of a change.
So today we are on campus of Les Roches. And this is the place where Krisztina spends most of your time, yes, working as a professor here. So our question is, how does your daily life look like as a professor here?
Yeah, actually we're lucky today, because normally on a normal work day, this area would be just so busy with students, faculty members, staff members walking, running around. But if I think of a very typical day, first of all, as a professor, there are many different things that I have to deal with. And most of the people, for some reason, think that if you are working at a university, the only thing what we're doing is being in classes and teaching. So that's an urban legend. We can forget about that. Usually I arrive super early, and if I have classes from 8 o'clock in the morning, for me it means a wake up at 5 o'clock, because I live a bit farther from here. But you know, it's a really good motivation for you, waking up so early, getting ready mentally for your whole day, coming, having breakfast here. We have amazing breakfast here. And then you're ready to walk into a classroom and to do a lot of different slots. Sometimes it really depends on the semester's, let's say, dynamic. I have way too many classes in the morning hours, in the afternoon hours, and because we have 5 minutes of break, the biggest difficulty is when you have to switch, like mentally, from one course to the other. And you know, data analytics, economics, something completely different, a dissertation meeting with a student. So you have to be really flexible to keep everything under control on the go. Because if you have 5 minutes to have a tiny bit of a break, to walk into a completely group of different students, different levels, different semesters, different level of their, let's say, even understanding of things, and then suddenly you have to talk with a BBA 7 student who is already almost graduating, doing a dissertation meeting, which is a one-to-one sort of tutorial, mentoring, guidance, and it's a completely different presence what is required. Then normally we have a pretty long lunch break. And if we have any special meetings, they usually happen in those 2 hours, and the afternoon shift comes. But because I'm also a general education pathway coordinator, besides teachings, I have to deal with a lot of administration, checking how those courses which belong to me perform, checking the syllabus, checking any learning outcomes, any content, communication with other faculty members. And that's what I love about my job. So it's not what you think by definition is, but I go around, I travel to Switzerland, I'm visiting lecture there as well with the EMB group, and it's just so much fun at the end of the day, high season, low season. So it's a hospitality school, right? And for us faculty members, there's absolutely no difference. Once the semester is on the roll, we have no break, but you get the maximum level of excitedness and me also learning new things at the same time. And then you have vacations, low season, mental recovery, recharging. So pretty hectic, but that's how I love it. And I'm workaholic, that's my problem.
So as you said, you love reading, no?
Absolutely.
So what do you mostly read in your free time?
Yeah, if you ask me now, my taste really changed because in my early 20s, I was rather about novels and something that is rather, fiction. But because I'm really dedicated to my work, I'm trying to really develop myself and I'm trying to catch up to the latest professional literature. So I have two sources of inspiration and self-development. One of them is actually the LinkedIn. So believe me or not, but LinkedIn is becoming a really, really powerful tool where you can educate yourself. If you find the right people, the right, let's say, speakers, influencers there, and you'll be following them regularly. For example, one of my favorites is Sahil Bloom. He's extremely popular. He talks about personal growth, development. Check on him. Amazing podcasts, amazing videos. He's extremely successful, but a really, really humble human being. And I'm subscribed to such newsletters as well. And every week, just, a tiny bit like catching up. What's a hot topic, how people think about this or that. Can I really see a source of inspiration, whether it's, fitness or economics or growing financially? I do that. But when I have a bit more of a free time, I have a list of books that I'm always trying to get and order. And they're about economics, about disruption, about self-development techniques. I have no more room for literature or fiction, at least not at that point of my life.
Well, I would really love to mention LinkedIn because I've seen how active you are, and actually you're one of the people who is all the time, doing something interesting, commenting, posting. So when I was preparing, I was reading everything, and even before our interview, I was always reading everything. So you said LinkedIn is a very powerful learning tool.
Absolutely.
But how can we use it actually to learn? Because there is too much information.
There you go.
I go to my feed and I see everything about the topics that I don't want,
Yeah. Well, LinkedIn is hard work, and if you want to do it right, you need to start with developing your profile very correctly. There are techniques you can search on it, how to develop your own LinkedIn. You need a lot of connections, and the most important thing is that you start filtering those people who you are following, and then we'll automatically suggest you like a flow. You choose your hashtags, you choose your field of interest, you choose what you represent, you write a nice bio about yourself. And in my case, what I see that these days, LinkedIn is becoming a really, really powerful social media tool when it comes to career. I'm not into Instagram, I'm not into any of this. For me, it's noise, it's very noisy. But on LinkedIn, you will get access to those people who shape these days the flow of the events, the economy, the society. And what I can observe, that there are so many so-called let's say coaches these days, or people who call themselves coaches, but if you open their bio, they really never studied anything about that field, what they're preaching about. They have no experience. They just tend to either copy someone or they start their own movement, but at the end of the day, they don't really tell you anything new. So it's very hard, to pick those influencers who are truly making a change and making a difference. That's a lot of work. So you have to dig down deep there, go down to the rabbit hole, right? And then you find a couple of people who are close to, hospitality, human factor, those who want to revolutionize. For example, Steve Turk, if you search on this name, he is now a leader in the hospitality industry. Or David Araya, he's from Spain as well. Amazing coaching, but he's the real deal, and he's actually one of our external teachers for the executives too. You can see him around Les Roches. So find those people, but do your fact check on LinkedIn. And then, you will see the right messages and not just the so-called noise. So that's what I'm doing.
Would you recommend LinkedIn both for professionals and students?
Absolutely.
Yes.
The sooner the better. Because, it also takes time to dig yourself deep into a social media platform. And as I'm telling all my students, you are your own brand, okay? And it's never too early to start working for yourself, because at some point of your life, you will work for a company. And it's really nice. It's very linear, as many of us think. But, at the end of the day, the value that you contribute to the growth of the company will be really lost. Like, you will feel like a little ant, in the system. And many of us, we're a bit more creative. At some point, you want a tiny bit more. So it means that you will have something else on the side as a gig, as just a field of interest. So build yourself up parallelly to whatever work you have, let's say on LinkedIn or any other social media. And then you either do a switch, you run the two things parallelly, but finance, if you imagine a portfolio, rule number one, keep it as diverse as possible. And then it will be good for your mental health. You won't be so dependent on your employer. And I think you will find the right people around yourself. So go ahead and push that LinkedIn button.
Definitely, yes. LinkedIn is helping lots of people nowadays.
Yeah.
And to get the jobs, to recruit people, everything. So it's a really powerful platform that some people don't really know how to use. So that's why I asked.
Yeah, they get
question.
stuck at the level of Instagram, and there we go.
Exactly.
But then, whatever you do on the internet, it will stay there. So you want to make sure that you're really trustworthy, that
your change from a big capital city, Budapest, to here. You moved here in 2019, no, to Marbella, as I understand. I just want to ask how and what influenced you to come here, from a big capital city to a more quiet and calm city?
Well, that's actually a combination of a lot of things, and I came from a really special background because after having all those difficulties with finding my path, I actually worked for 5 years for a law office as well. Both with my studies included. Apart from that as well, I was a financial assistant there, working with different credits, recalculating them, and it was a good, really experience for me as well. And then I decided to do my PhD program that took an additional 6 years. And in the meantime, the social and economic environment in Hungary really changed. And for those people who wanted to stay in the academia, so if you wanted to work for a university as a professor, assistant professor, PhD candidate, I realized that there were way too many obstacles. And first I was just accepting them, just focusing on my PhD program. And then after a while, you just see, okay, what's next? What are my chances if I stay in this small country, which is not even having the population of 10 million people? So imagine again all those opportunities. And economically, it was becoming really challenges there. For professors, the salaries were ridiculous, and I can say that with confidence that they were not increasing salaries there for many years for professors in universities. And I'm speaking of the public sector, where my plan was to go and move forward. The universities were following really, traditional and outdated techniques, methods. There was no room for creativity. Even during my PhD candidacy phase, they put me to teach such subjects, to do such activities that were not even close to my field, like accounting or anything like that. And everything just kind of summed up, and you were struggling. And then I decided to look a bit around Europe. First, I wanted Italy. Because I used to study Italian language for many years in a row. And then Italy was not in the best situation either. So what was left there? Spain, amazing climates, nice people, a really big, mix of the cultures and history, especially if you think about Andalusia. And I took a risk, and then I moved in 2019, and that was probably, someone would say, the most stupid decision someone can make at such an age and with such a background. But when you have nothing really to lose, then you're becoming a bit more courageous with those things. And that was the best decision that I could take at that point of my life. I had no friends, I had no contacts, I had no promise of a job, I didn't speak any Spanish. So the best what I could do was, from the Italian to kind of understand the Spanish language, which was ridiculous. And what happened after, it was just a lot of struggling, because in 2019 and 20, the COVID came, and you can imagine what happened with the educational sector. People were laid off, I had only external positions. I was all over the coast, traveling between Marbella, Stepana, Malaga, teaching different digital courses as well. For example, I had the startup course for the Malaga University as well. I was writing publications, but nothing really made me feel secure or happy or satisfied. And one day I got an email from Les Roches that they wanted to schedule an interview with me. And I looked quickly up the name on the internet and I thought to myself, okay, so this is hospitality. What can I do there, right, as an economist? And then we had a really nice Zoom call. I was sitting at home with one of my puppies in my lap because I have 3 dogs. And actually, I became really, attracted to the way people were talking to me. So that was, again, the human factor that kicked in, and it goes through that you're not just part of a mechanical process of being questioned, but you see the people behind, the scenes. And those people want to know who you are. So that was something which gave me a really good first impression. And I was working for 1 semester as an external, helping out the teacher of economics back then. And then next semester I was offered actually a full-time contract. So since then I'm there and I'm dealing with so many things that it's hard to even list.
You are now taking such positions at Les Roches Marbella. Do you experience any challenges in this area?
Absolutely. These days I'm really happy to see that more and more people are opening up and they start to discuss all those difficulties that certain people have to go through. And in many of the cases, it's always about the women, especially when it comes to the STEM sector. Anything related to the real sciences. But I think that not much is said about women who belong to a certain age group. They talk a lot about women who are mature. They talk a lot about women who come from certain countries. And that's really exciting. I'm really happy to read about that. But not many people talk about young women who start, let's say, their career and they either decide to, for example, work at the university to do research or work for a company, but they have, let's say, some kind of an academic title. And I believe that there's so many cliches and so many really wrong or very, very traditional expectations towards someone who belongs to a certain age group that it's really hard to battle them. So if you're young and if you have a certain degree, apparently you have to prove yourself so much more harder, and there's nothing really to do to help it unless you're talking about it. You see that in most of the cases, whatever university it is, public or private, leading positions are taken by men, by males, right? And again, if you check the percentages, if you read any statistics, the distribution of women, men, other genders, you will see definitely that when it comes to women, those statistics are not that impressive. So what could be done? I believe that if we do not talk about such challenges and we always accept the fact that if you're a young woman and if you come from a certain level of education, they expect you to work 3 times harder, then nothing will happen. But if we start talking about it and we say that if you belong to a certain area, economics, hospitality, you don't have to be 40, 50 or 60 to know the content, to have an expertise, to engage with students, to find the right approach, to come up with a great business idea, because it's not always, the theory or the years spent with something which makes you a good expert. We have certain, inborn skills. We have the capability to connect with others, and those cannot be taught. And I believe that people have to be recognized also by those skills, and not that I spent 20 years as a university professor here and there. Because I do remember when I was a student and we had so many professors, with all the respect, that they were not capable of upgrading their content. They were using slides for 10 years without changing even a title. And we literally had no connection with them. Yes, they were professionals. Yes, we really respected them, but we did never really feel any connection to them, no inspiration, no passion. And I decided to choose what I am, not because of them, but because maybe of that 1% when it came to the faculty who broke through that wall. And that person, created the real contact between a young student and someone who can explain how things work around the world, okay? So I believe that that's something that we have to talk about. Age is one of our characteristics. We cannot help it, okay? But the way we represent ourselves and the way we reach out to our audience, the way we inspire others, and the way we can, make someone become a different person or a much more profound professional, I think something should be much more recognized than just your degrees, your experience, and the years that you spent here and there.
It's really interesting to hear your opinion, how you balance your life between the semesters, because, well, it's really tough even for students, for us, you know, to be all the time on track with our studies. But for you as a teacher, as a professor, you have to teach and you have to give this individual approach to each student in each group. So what's your secret to that?
Exactly. Well, to be honest, and I'm really trying to be honest, this is not really a profession for everyone because it's really demanding mentally. And as I said before, because of this seasonality, you have to be good with adapting to the dynamics of it. So for example, if I have a very busy semester, it's not just there are many classes you have to deal with, but imagine you have sometimes hundreds of students and they're on completely different level. You need to get to know them a tiny bit more. I have one golden rule that really helped me through the years to stay more or less balanced and to keep my, let's say, motivation and drive. And that rule is that I need to keep myself very busy, very interested, to learn new things and to be excited about that content, even if I'm repeating it for the 5th time in a row, which happens. Because last semester, can you imagine that I had a BBA 6 semester with 5 parallel groups, and every single week I had to repeat literally the same content 5 times in a row. So to be able to stay fresh, to enjoy what I'm doing, it's really important to enjoy our work as well on a daily basis, otherwise you would burn out, and so many people are struggling with that, right? I was always trying to look into new things, to find a new perspective, to come up with a good example, to involve students as much as possible, because, you know, I really do not believe that a classroom environment has to be static when there's only one direct communication from me to the audience. We have to be a team, and at the end of the day, these young people will end up working for amazing hotels, leading their own teams, and if they do not know how to communicate, express their thoughts, or be passionate about something, maybe they're not good with that subject, but at least they know what to do, which person to find, how to ask a question. So that gives me a sort of a drive that as long as I stay entertained, as long as I can develop myself on a daily basis, I can keep everything under control. And in the evenings, I do training, so that's another thing. If you have a really stressful work environment that requires a lot of mental effort on a daily basis, super important to physically train. And I came to this realization over many, many years, because if I skip my training routine, I do not have energy next day. The only way we produce energy if we train ourselves physically and mentally at the same time. And you just have to find your comfort zone, whatever works for you. Over the years, we change, right? If we're in our 20s or 30s, it's up to you what you like. But for me, I have my routine, and if I do not do that, then I will never be able to share that energy, what will keep my classes on a certain level that is, you know, acceptable for me. Also, I have 3 big dogs. That's a separate thing. You know, people who have a lot of dogs, they just can't be passive. Even if I don't want to, I have to deal with them. One of them is 65 kilo, so you can imagine all the work, all the motivation that I have to give them at the end of the day. So I would say, for me, that's the recipe. Stay active as much as you can and try to believe in what you're doing, that it will develop you on a daily basis, and then you will enjoy it. Do not fake anything in your life, because it will have a long-term application that you will burn out and you'll be very fake towards your audience, and people sense it. Even young people, they sense it if you're not truthful, if you're not honest, if you don't like what you're saying, if you do not know what you're saying. I cannot allow myself the luxury to walk into a classroom without knowing for sure that I know what I'm talking about. So that's my rule number 2, okay? Being prepared and enjoying it as well. That's what I can say.
What's the difference between a teacher and a professor?
Yeah, I'm really happy that you brought up this question, because in the spoken language, and I think most people are really not aware about that, we use the expression of teacher and professor as synonyms. They are not, because if you think about a teacher, it's anyone who works for primary school, secondary school, high school, college. But when we use the word professor, it's a bit more than that, because if I really want to be accurate, it means you need a doctoral degree to become a professor. And there are 3 stages. As soon as you defend your dissertation, you get a title, which is a PhD of something. and you become an assistant professor, which requires a fully accomplished PhD, publications, years of experience in teaching, and a lot of other things. Next level would be associate professor, and the third one, let's say at the top of the pyramid, is the full professor. But again, the difference is not just with that, whether you have a PhD degree or not, but professors, they create a lot of content, they create courses, they have a much bigger responsibility, they deal with so much more people than just if you think about of a typical college or high school. And your responsibility is to prepare those young people for a degree that will, put them somewhere in a position in real life. So that's why it's just a very complex thing, and it's not really, offending anyone if you say teacher, professor, but it's really accurate to say that not every teacher can fulfill the roles for a professor. And it takes a lot of years, it's a really long journey, and I think that less and less people these days decide to take such a leap of faith. And what happened to me, because we were talking before that I got my inspirations almost when I graduated from university from my master's studies. I had those professors who impressed me, I really loved economics. And then I had a sort of a gap year when I was not sure what to do. And that's very normal. But again, I was that maximalist, top performer, always focusing on everything, trying to go for the best grades, which was again not the best thing for me, but that's how I was. And I worked for a law office, and before I had a gap of 8 or 9 years when I could not find any job. As I said before, it was after the economic crisis, let's say 2013, 2014. The financial crisis happened in 2008 in Europe. And the problem was that it had like a second round. It came back as a double-dip recession, and it was really challenging to find a job. The problem besides the crisis was that I was not fitting into a regular portfolio of trends in multinational companies, and I really didn't know what to do with myself. I found this job, I was working with an attorney, he was the best boss ever. I ended up working for him part-time for almost 5 years. I was dealing with different credits and recalculations, and then in between I realized that that was not what I wanted to do, and I got again passionate about all my studies, all my way of thinking as an economist, so I decided to go for a PhD program. And that's how everything began. I think the most brutal part of a profession or a job is when you have no more room for development. You can't grow. As soon as I stop growing, I do not know what to do with myself. Depression, not knowing what to do, looking for new options, and I'm always looking for any field which is always open for your personal development. Because if I cannot develop myself, I cannot give that opportunity to my students. And that's another rule that I'm trying to follow.
And I really want to talk about teaching as a profession. Like you said, you had a long journey to understanding what do you want to do. And as a teacher, as a professor now, do you think it's really important, do you think it's an important skill to listen to understand your students? How do you deal nowadays with so many groups, with so many students? They're all different. So do you have any pattern that you use, any strategy to kind of have everything on track, like?
trying to, let's say so. A lot of challenges are in there, but again, if I think about myself when I was doing my own studies, and that bad experience with most of the professors that we had no connection with them, they were talking about really theoretical things. They rarely updated their slides. There was not much practical, not much passion. And it keeps a really, really significant bridge between you and that person who is there, to inspire you to get a degree. Because if you have a degree, it's an unfair advantage. That's how I call it, because you will be in a really privileged position once you know what you want to do with that. And I wanted to change a tiny bit, this approach between a typical professor and, let's say, a young audience. So what my goal is every single time we have a new semester. So apparently you meet a lot of new people, a lot of new students. They either know you or they do not know you. They hear about you, good things, bad things, everything. I don't even want to know what they hear about us. But I'm telling them that because I teach a bit more, like quantitative subjects, that I'm not a math teacher, what is your first memory, first experience if you think about your math class? And then everyone is saying, oh my God, it was awful, it was horrible, I was forced to do that, no one encouraged me. When I was in primary school, we had a horrible math teacher, and he was doing execution literally on the spot. Imagine first grade, giving us things to do, to count, to calculate. If you did not know the right answer in 2-3 seconds, you were publicly ashamed. And I think it's a really typical thing. So that's when a lot of young people, they lose this open-mindedness towards being critical, using quantitative approaches, doing calculations, or at least, knowing what to do if you do not know what the answer is. And that is really missing. So I'm trying to make everyone very open-minded, and it's all the practice. I share my story at the beginning of the semester. I'm telling them why is it so good to be a critical thinker. Because you can have the best degree ever, but if you will not find your place, on a given market, then no one will be able to help you. So you need that passion, that's super important. You need to think very rationally, self-critically as well. And super important, find your own niche, find your gap where you will be able to create real value, like a real market demand, as we say in economics. So that's what I'm trying to do. We have a lot of conversations, we have a lot of group work, a lot of teamwork. I do have more theoretical part, but then we do a quick switch. All right, let's apply this to practice. And if you think of such courses as data analytics, there's so many tools these days. With the development of the AI, the sky is the limit, what can be accomplished.
Well, it's really interesting to also understand, and well, for students, as you said, you have a very interesting class, you have a very interesting courses that we studied, for example, data analytics. What would you say? Well, data analytics is also very connected with research, How does it help students after graduation? Like, for example, you said when students have passion, but some students, they just think up to their exams, they're studying it to pass the exam. So after that, it's really hard to understand how to use this subject. What would you say about your own experience, and what do you think about this?
I think I'm really lucky because I can teach a subject which is really universal and really general. I'll call it a tool, like a set of tools. It's like a universal language. If you do not speak data in the 21st century, in the era of AI, you'll be really lost, because as soon as you graduate and your parents won't be behind you, from the moment of you finding your first job, doing an internship, or let's say starting an entrepreneurship, any kind of a business that you're up to, you have to do a lot of market research. If you do not know what your audience truly wants at that moment, let's say real market demand, then no one will be able to show interest, even if you're convinced that you're doing the best thing ever. And that requires a lot of research, a lot of information, data about competitors, the market dynamics, the most recent trends in that country, in that area, in the industry. If you're not following them on an everyday basis, and suddenly you just realize, okay, I'm lagging behind, what can I do? You can't master that in a week or a few days. So you must motivate yourself to follow the news, to follow the flow of the information, to be aware of your industry, the recent trends, people to follow, those who are, kind of shaping the mainstream. And once you already have a sort of a framework of your business environment, then you would be able to get a bit closer to what to do with yourself and what to offer to your potential target audience. But if you do not have those quantitative skills and you do not know what tools to use, for example, I always suggest everyone, when it comes to hospitality industry, there is no data available. That is a disaster. We can do real research because apparently private companies do not publish that data. So you are lucky, you go to statista.com and maybe you find something, but then go against the flow, and if you know the Google Trends, you find the proper keyword, and if you search on that keyword, it will actually show you the number of people who were using Google Chrome and Google Trends. And if you extend the timeline up to 2004, you can see an existing real interest towards something that people actually were typing in their Google search engine. And who could say that it is not a real market demand? Even if I do not have direct, data from companies or organizations, I can do a sort of a secondary research on that. And to see if the previous 5 years rather showed a decrease, a stagnation, an increase, and to do something with that information. But for that, you need to know what you're doing, how to find the data, how to analyze, how to see behind them. Most importantly, you must know what purpose is behind all that research. So I really hope that, you know, it's something that anyone, regardless of their industry or field of interest, can use at some point of their life. Because if there is no data, you do not have the power. And data can be so easily manipulated these days. You know, the deepfake era, the AI, and do not trust anything. Trust what you bring with yourself to the table.
That's right. And well, data analytics is pretty challenging also course for some people, you know, and I think it's really important to teach in a very, you know, unique way, not just to be kind of boring and stuff. So my question is, do you have any kind of techniques how you teach your students so they stay more, you know, passionate and interested about the subject?
Yeah. Well, what I'm trying to do, I try to see the individuals behind them, because at the end of the day, me being a person delivering some kind of a knowledge or a set of skills, and that audience that will be extremely mixed, we have to break the ice. And that ice-breaking event always happens when we have the very first classes. It's not just, you know, me talking about the syllabus and the requirements and the assessments. It's all there, you can read it, go ahead, do your job. But I'm trying to show them any kind of an evidence how I can enrich their knowledge, and actually what would be my style. My style is being super practical. So I always try to bring real examples, real data. I tell them that I do not work with fake data. I do not like randomly create data and we just like simulate situations in most of the cases, because then imagine if you create a sort of analysis of certain countries about the chosen indicator, GDP, inflation rate, unemployment, you do an actual macroeconomic analysis of a country. Isn't that exciting that we can see really what's going on behind the scenes? And for me, communication is a must, because if I don't hear their voice in class, if I do not give them the room to ask, to say something, many of them, oh, maybe that's a stupid question. No, that's not a stupid question. Grow into a habit of asking, because, you know, once you're out there on your own in the labor market or anywhere else, no one will tell you to ask questions. No one will be holding your hand. And you need to have this healthy and aggressive habit to ask a question, whether it's a good one or a bad one, but you show interest with that. And I want to offer a safe environment in my classrooms where they can ask me anything. I'm happy to discuss it and we can think together, because then we're a circle, we're a team. I'm not at the top of a pyramid just, you know, channeling something that they have to do, and I'll be either punishing them or appreciating with grades, but we try to grow together to develop something, and by the end of the semester, they do realize that behind everything what we're going through, like imagine a regression analysis, okay? You don't have to. It will make sense, because it will open your way of thinking of, okay, I know this platform, I know this data set, I know this model, and I know to interpret, because I think most students and most people struggle to talk about data, to talk about the analysis. They cannot explain the data. And number one ambition what I have with data analytics is to tell, to show how you can explain, how you can bring a story behind the data. So that's my most important goal.
So in your LinkedIn, you said that your goal is not teaching itself, but you're on the quest of transforming the learning experience. What does that mean?
Well, when it comes to, again, education, I tend to think about myself as an educator as well. It's not really related, you know, to a position, to a job, or the background that I'm coming from, but someone who can show others how to grow further, because I think personal growth is one of the most popular topics these days. If you follow certain people on LinkedIn, more and more of them are putting himself into this tag, personal growth, personal development. And again, we're kind of like breaking out of the traditional way of living since the pandemic. Like if you just think how many people are working now from home, they're digital nomads, they're traveling around the world. So we have so much more autonomy, so much more time, so many possibilities, that it's really, really, you know, the best era to create something new. And education, if you think about the classical version of it, I think it's a dinosaur. It is dying, and that is obvious since 2020-21, when all the schools, all the universities went into lockdown, and we had no idea how to get back to the students when we're physically not in one room anymore. So for some reason, even the biggest universities, they started to lose the number of students, the general interest. Such companies as Google, they do not even require anymore a degree, but they tell their potential workers to come to join them, and they would provide the training on the spot, all those skills which are changing a little on a daily basis. So that's true, education cannot give you everything, and it cannot keep up anymore with the fast development of the innovation. But at the end of the day, for those few years that you spent in a university environment, it is a very challenging one and a really exceptional moment of your life. The last time when you will be with others who will be guiding you, who will be telling you certain options and how to work your way towards a real solution. When I say that we need to transform education, it's exactly what I mean, that besides, doing a specialization, having a physical piece of paper, what is your degree, you do a lot of networking. You meet your professors, you meet a lot of people who come from the industry, you exchange thoughts. You will always have someone on your mind later on, okay, if I want to talk about, management, marketing, economics, this and that person is the one that I would exchange my thoughts with. It's like a hub. And it's not just me, who's thinking that, but such prestigious institutions as the Stanford University in the United States, they were technically the hub of the most intellectual, let's say, startup founders who went there. They either did their degree or they dropped out of school, as many of them did, right? Check out the Dropout show on Netflix, amazing, about a female startup let's say creator who dropped out of Stanford, and then what was happening to her, mind-blowing show, in brackets. But those universities actually offer an atmosphere where the professionals and the very ambitious young people can be together, to think together, to grow together. And I believe that besides just possessing a title, a degree, if that education is offered you in a proper way, if you have people who show you ways how to grow further, if you have your personal inspiration, whether it's a book, a professor, someone from the industry where you spent, half of a semester of your internship, then you will know how to go there. And it's like I would call it as again a bridge between you coming from somewhere, having an ambition what to do, and then those people open new horizons for you, and they will just guide you, channel you into the given industry and profession. So I'm really trying to work on much more practical approaches in a classroom environment. We have a lot of fun. So by the end of the semester, I had this crazy thing. It started once randomly. I don't even know how it just came out of my mind. And it's either data analytics or economics. But what we do, we have our last class. Imagine everyone is really freaking out because the exams are coming up. And I bring a lot of tools with me, okay, a lot of creative tools. So we try to recreate certain concepts that we studied together through the semester for a photograph with our own bodies. Okay, what does that mean? Imagine it's a class of economics and maybe you studied about the supply and the demand. Imagine a coordinate system. You have the two slopes, you have the functions, you have the equilibrium, you have this and that. And we just create the two axes, we create the two curves, we put a little equilibrium point in there with the most creative things ever. And that's when I would say every bit of a stress is gone before the final exams. We're done with the semester and we celebrate it, because I think without a sense of a humor, you cannot survive out there. Whether it's university, your future studies, your business, you need that sense of humor. And we do it every semester. The more groups I have, the more creative I get with them. And then I'm telling you, okay, we're going to do a bell curve. We will do like some sort of a histogram that is not symmetric. Then we're going to do supply and demand. We'll do a bar chart. We'll do like a, I don't know, some kind of a sample and a population. And then I added those pictures. I add a lot of creative elements and I published them on my LinkedIn. And that's, you know, the last little, I would say, explosion of stress, fun, everything. At the end, we're just human beings who try to do cool stuff together and grow together. So that's what I'm trying to do.
When students choose the university and when before they choose the university, they want to understand and have the clear mind about what they're going to do after it. So Would you say that choosing the right university is the key? Would you say that it's important because the university that you choose have the exact community, you know,
Yeah.
and within this community you can learn and you can build your reputation, you can build everything. For example, at Les Roches, it's a very good chance to learn for hospitality leaders, for the future hospitality leaders. We have teachers here and we have students based on that. And what was your experience at university? You had the same, or that some
Yeah.
people, yeah.
That's something really important again before applying for any university, if you want to do that, because it's not compulsory, but then you need to know why you're trying to do that. Go ahead, read a lot about that, do your research, compare that institution with other competitors, and not just, you know, all those fancy rankings that are published on a yearly basis, because, you know, eventually we never know how those methodologies are created, and you can find a lot of personal experiences from students. I usually go and try to look for such platforms as, I think, Glassdoor or Indeed.com, and this is when you are searching on a given institution, it can be even your future job, and people, workers, students, they share their honest opinion without a name. So that's super important. Like, forget about the fancy rankings. Try to find people who share testimonials. Read the good stuff, read the bad stuff. Try to, you know, imagine if you could actually be one of them or not. And that already tells you a lot. If you have the physical possibility to go to the venue, to experience, you know, the whole atmosphere, it's another thing, you know, like, they say first impressions really matter. They do. Listen to your gut feelings, okay? If you feel that there is a lot of stress, that it's all about you are like a racehorse, it's about the performance, maybe it's not for you. But if you feel it's a very relaxed environment where you're passionate, you want to grow, you want to show your good sides, you want to connect with people, and you know that everyone is here for the same reason, and you just, you know, want to go there and enjoy yourself for a couple of years, then it's probably another green flag that should be something worth of considering, okay? But then again, there's so many things that we do not know behind the scenes, so data analytics kicks in here as well. Find rankings, find testimonials of actual people who already completed the program, read a lot of reviews, reach out to people who work there, set up a meeting with a professor and maybe someone who's coordinating things, and they will tell you, you know, a bit more, because there is a fancy catalog which tells you all the marketing about the program, but do you think an 18 or 19-year-old person actually knows what it means? So go ahead, talk with those people, bring your parents, walk around the campus, and then ask yourself, okay, I go here, what are we going to do with this degree when we're ready to graduate, okay? So yes, university really matters, but I would say it's just one of the components which will eventually create your unfair advantage that you bring to the table. And don't you think of any, like, you know, bad thing when I'm saying unfair advantage. Unfair advantage is some kind of a really important characteristic, skill, feature of yours that the competitors do not really possess. And then you'll be, you know, outstanding. So you have a good grade, you have a good university, you have a nice diploma ready to go, but if you actually bring all that knowledge from all those years that you invested into your personal development, then those two things will create a really nice portfolio for you, because you're your own brand. So many personal factors matter. If someone comes from the Oxford or Cambridge, it doesn't mean that that person will be the best worker in a given organization, because you have to adapt to the environment, you have to be a good team worker, you need to be creative, individual. Knowing theory well is nothing. We have ChatGPT, right? In a second, you know all answers to any kind of a question. It will do all the mathematical calculations for us, okay? So time to be more human. Human factor is the most important thing that will make you unique, outstanding, and you can disrupt whatever you're trying to do if you go against the flow. But again, data, 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 and data, and just try to figure out where would be your best area to show that unfair advantage what you develop during those years.
Do you have a definition of success in your life, and what is the formula to becoming a successful person?
I think not even a lifetime is enough to figure out what success truly is. But at the end of the day, what we can really see is that there's so many people out there who are trying to tell us, to preach us what success is, and they create a sort of a mainstream, a general direction that everyone considers as good, right, correct, something to follow, something to do in exactly the same way. If we do that, again, we will lose our chance to find our own personal definition of a success. Success is not permanent, so I believe that it depends on millions of things, such as your age, your situation, what you're naturally driven by. And the biggest mistake what we do is that we accept that success is always defined by the external environment. Either your family, your friends, your partner, other professionals in your industry, or just generally the people out there. Because then you start living up to their expectations and not your own. And it cannot really be called a success. So I believe it's really, really important to be honest. Just walk to a mirror, face yourself, and try to figure out where you're trying to get with everything what you bring to the table. Everyone has a story. And I believe that our success is so difficult to understand because no one wants to see the story behind the people. We always see that little moment like a sparkle, like a firework, when something good happens to another person. They brag about it on social media and you think that this is their permanent reality. However, if you really face yourself, if you're truthful to yourself and you start comparing yourself to what you used to be a couple of years ago, what was your goal back then? Where did you get? Where are you now per moment? And what would be your mission and vision? Like speaking of a company for 1 year, for a couple of years from now on, that I believe that that success will become your own personal, I would call it like a path, a channel, and always leave room for fluctuations. So don't keep it tight, don't keep it rigid. You want that position, go for it. What is needed to do that? But ask yourself always the next step, like if I'm in that role, if I'm in that position, you know, if I work for that company, if I'm collaborating with those people, what is going to be the next step, you know, to maintain my success? Because there is never an ending. It's, you know, it's like a trap that pulls you in, and if you do not know what's going on in the next couple of years, then you kind of end up falling out of your own definition of a success. So try to really shadow block the environment. Know what your values are, because your internal values are the most important thing. Your work, your career, your professional development, your personal relationships, if they're not really following your personal values, then you will end up having a lot of conflicts in your life. Okay, so you will burn out, you will not be happy, you will have even physical problems, diseases, illnesses, some kind of imbalance. And then once you know that, you start like moving towards some kind of a passion, ambition, and passion is super important. I believe success always has to come with passion. Do you know what you're passionate about? Do you know what makes you very intense when you think about something? Either a person, a job, a mission. Do you want to protect animals' rights? Do you want to stand up for women? Do you want to, I don't know, inspire young people or anything like that? Keep that passion alive, because as long as it lives inside of you, you'll be truly aware of what success could be for your personal case. That's what I can say. The rest is just all, you know, very, very copyable. You can really imitate things. And again, we live in the world of ChatGPT, so I think being unique is the most important value for the next 10, 20 years for sure.
Thank you so much for watching this video. I would like to remind you to subscribe and like this video, as any interactions are super valuable for our channel to grow. If you want to be the next guest in our show on inspiring people on Costa del Sol, then leave a message below.